was considered the grandmaster of the studio. His pictures were so graphically gripping, they would stop you from turning the page. He worked for 60 plus years at Vogue magazine. He was the opposite of all the photographers of his generation or a little before who were working in the street with small cameras. His work evolved in serially. And the most surprising thing is that these series continued throughout his life. He started as a photographer of still life for the covers of the magazine. And pretty soon he moved into portraiture. Then it turned out that he was working for a fashion magazine, and so naturally they opened up fashion to him too, and he became a great fashion photographer. Among photographers, Penn is considered the greatest craftsman. There is nobody who had as broad a learning in technical and handcraft in photography as Penn in his generation. Penn spent hours in the darkroom, printing and reprinting and reprinting. He goes back to the negative over and over and over again as he develops through his life, as he evolves as an artist. There is an evolution in the way he thinks about his prints. And so we have a large span of possible expressions. It was almost never anything but the simplest. He was very humble. You know, he wore his blue jeans and his tennis shoes, and people actually mistook him for a studio assistant because he was so modest. But he was also intense and patient. He was so attentive. His blue eyes, it seemed as if he was listening with his eyes. And he really connected with that person that was in front of him. I'd love the public to take away not only the beauty of the prints and the extraordinary span of work that has been presented, but also to understand that photography of this level is the equivalent of any great art.
Over the Christmas holidays in 1948, Irving Penn was sent on assignment to Peru to shoot the model Jean Patchett for the magazine. He spent the first week absorbing his newest surroundings, but not taking a single photograph until the moment of inspiration struck when Jean sat against a wall to rub her sore foot. With that photograph, the story began, capturing Jean with a realism not seen before in Vogue with their travel photographers. The scenes were not overtly glamorous, but rather a more humble depiction through the role Jean Patchett was playing in her interactions with the local people. Penn extended his stay to photograph some indigenous Peruvians in a studio he found in Cusco, resulting in some of his most acclaimed work of his career. He wrote of the experience, "When subjects arrived to the studio to be photographed, they found me instead of the proprietor. Instead of them paying me, I paid them for posing, a very confusing affair." During those 3 days, he shot over 2,000 negatives, a selection of which were published in Vogue the following year.
Two serious children leaning against a Victorian stool that reaches up to their waists, revealing how young they must be despite their solemn faces. Irving Penn was a famous fashion photographer at the time, one of the first. And yet, this portrait of two kids from the capital of Peru has become one of the most appreciated and famous of his works. With his keen eye, Penn constantly used his camera to seek out the truth and to uncover the hidden. Never to own or conquer it, but to remind himself and others of the fragility of existence and of life's miracles.